SQL Exchange, yes, we do have a solution for both SQL backup and Exchange backup. We can talk about that more in detail when we're talking through the technology. Do we have a solution for VMware? Yes. Can you quickly recover entire virtual machines after a disaster? Yes. In the event of large-scale data loss, how does restore happen? Can you overnight a disk? What about Macs? So yeah, we're going to cover all of that in the technology section of the presentation. All right, so just looking very briefly at the total cost of ownership of a hardware-based solution versus online backup. This is important for you to understand. When you're pitching this to your customers, you're generally pitching this as a cost saver. So them moving to online backup is going to save them quite a lot of money. And in this scenario, this was a real customer of ours with 12 workstations and a server that they migrated to us. And the total cost, you can see there, the total capital outlay in year one was $6,146. The 5-year cost was $9,130. That excludes labor. So this was just the hard costs of the hardware and the software. And then comparing that to online backup was only $1,000 for that first year and $5,000 over the 5-year period. So on the first year, online backup was 16% of the cost of the hardware-based solution. So a roughly 75% cost saving. 85% cost saving for the customer. So an excellent cost saving for the customer, and that's just on the hard costs. When you then factor in the labor costs that they saved, they're saving an enormous amount of money, because the labor costs can actually be as much as 100% of the hardware and software costs. Good question. How much data was this? This was roughly a terabyte. I think it was just over a terabyte. In terms of the margin to the reseller, which I know is what everybody here is concerned about, on tape-based or hardware-based backup solutions, it's pretty typical to be making only single-digit margins. So in this particular scenario, the reseller made about $500 on that tape backup solution that he sold to the customer. But with the online backup solution, was making $500 per year. So over the same period, the reseller, or you in this scenario, has made $2,500 in revenue, whereas selling the tape-based solution or the disk-based solution would only have made $500. So the net situation is the end customer gets much better data protection at a much lower price, and the reseller ends up with a far better revenue stream that is far more profitable for the reseller over the same period. And then just some brief comparisons about the distinction between online backup and hardware backup, and where online backup does well. With deployment, obviously online backup is straight software, so deployment's very simple. There's no hardware to configure. From a coverage standpoint, one of the biggest problems with hardware-based backups is that coverage is a real problem. So laptops, branch offices, distributed user data, I'm sure everybody on the line has faced this challenge before. If you've got essentially architected backup solution, having laptops connect to a VPN to then run a scheduled backup over the VPN into the LAN, it's just a terrible solution. It doesn't work and people don't use it. Whereas with online backup, every single device is connected to the backup cloud and always connected to the backup cloud, which is really important. And one of the major ways that online backup really changes the backup landscape, frankly, in terms of ease of use for both you, the reseller, and for your customers. There is no media to worry about to take off site. Recovery, we had a bunch of questions about recovery, actually. So recovery with SOS is actually on the user's desktop. So the user doesn't even need to escalate to IT, let alone out to outside vendors anymore. It makes recovery extremely simple, extremely easy. You can recover on a version level, a file level, a folder level, a disk level, or recover an entire system, which is extremely powerful. So recoveries with tape and disk could take days, literally 2-3 days to rebuild an environment, whereas with online backup, you can immediately get access to your data. We had a question here about whether or not we could send out a disk, and we can definitely send out a disk if that's required. And so that's what we call our physical media recovery service. So from a recovery standpoint, the technology is vastly superior to tape and disk. In terms of security, we can talk in detail about the security model, but all of the data is encrypted 3 times, whereas with most hardware and tape-based backup systems, data is not encrypted at all. It's usually sitting on tapes unencrypted. Access to data is extremely simple, so you can access your data through an iPhone or a BlackBerry or an Android or a web browser, whereas with tape-based backup and hardware-based backup, recovery is only through central IT and is very difficult. From a cost standpoint, we already saw that online backup is a dramatically lower cost tier to the customer. And then that last comment, margin and revenue. For you, it's about a far richer margin and recurring revenue, which is also nice. So with hardware, not only are margins collapsing. We actually just had an audience member comment about how margins on hardware continue to collapse. It's not only that, but it's once-off revenue, whereas when you sell online backup, it's ongoing recurring revenue, which is very nice. So it's highly profitable and recurring. Okay, we've got some, just going through some more questions. Cover the seating model. Yep, I will talk more about that. How is pricing done? I'll cover that. Do we offer on-site and off-site? Yes, we do, and we're going to cover that. Full system OS recovery, we're definitely going to cover that. Data retention, recovery points, we're going to cover all of that. So we'll do a little bit more on the industry, and then we're going to dive into the technology, because it looks like most of the questions we're getting are about the specific technology. So we get, one of the most common questions we get at these webinars is how big is the online backup industry? And it's difficult to get very fine-grained statistics about the industry, but the overall backup industry is roughly a $10 billion a year annual industry when you split it between hardware, software, and services. So we saw earlier that just tape backup itself was $3 billion worth of hardware sales. So that it's quite a large industry when you take those three constituent components, particularly when you then look at the consumer, small business, and enterprise markets as well. The overall total online backup market today only stands at about $1 billion. So if we're looking at online backup getting 70 or 80% market share, which many people think it will, then the online backup industry stands to grow to a $7 or $8 billion a year industry, and it's nowhere near that yet. So to answer the question of is there still growth in this market, it's an absolute yes. Have I missed the boat? Is it too late for me to get into this? Absolutely no. It's a good time to be getting into the market. The market's been proven. Online backup's now a very well-accepted technology, and it's an excellent time for you to adopt it and start selling it to your customers. All right, so let's turn to the actual technology, which is where most people seem to be interested. And just at an architectural level, the SOS product's a little different to any other online backup product you may have seen in that it does a lot more than just backup. What we focus on is four key things: protect, access, share, and manage. So protect is about hardcore backup and recovery. Access is about being able to get to your data anywhere in the world from any type of device and transforming your data in different ways to make it more accessible to you. Share is what it sounds like. It's getting that data out to friends or colleagues. And then manage is based on our new Pulse management reporting framework, which really answers the question of how do I manage 1,000 PCs that I'm backing up? And that's never been something that's been easily handled in the backup world. And we've built a full management framework that is designed to manage a private backup cloud that you would manage, so that if you do deploy this out to, say, 1,000 workstations among your customers, you can then control all those workstations easily. All right. In terms of product features, I'll spin through these features, but please ask questions as we go. We've already got a bunch of questions that apply to these features, so I'll try and answer those. But if I've missed them, please just retype the question and I'll answer them. So let's start at the top here with continuous data protection. So built into the software is a CDP module. You don't need to license anything separate to get CDP, and that's what we call our Live Protect functionality. So you can set it up to monitor an individual file, and that's then going to watch that file, and whenever the file changes, it's going to back that file up to the cloud. Extremely useful for data that's changing rapidly, perhaps sensitive Office documents or other rapidly changing content that you need nearly constant protection on. It's still snapshot-based, so every single version is retained, so you don't need to worry about stomping over good copies with bad data, because every single version in the version history is going to be retained. One to the right, unlimited computers. And this is quite important. Most of our competitors, so the Carbonites and Moseys of the world, they limit you to one account, one PC, or they charge you license fees per PC. So if we take Moseys as an example, they charge $3.95 per seat, irrespective of per month, no matter how much data you're backing up. So in a typical sort of small business with 100 workstations that are connected, the customer's paying $4,800 a year simply in license fees without backing up any data yet. With SOS, one account can be used with up to 5,000 computers. So we say unlimited computers. And notionally, it is unlimited, but from a performance standpoint, we don't recommend you do more than 5,000 computers on one account, and that's what Pulse can manage as well, and we'll talk more about Pulse. But this is an extremely powerful feature, because it means from one interface, from one location, you can manage the backup of all of those different computers and manage the recoveries from all of those computers. Global roaming access. So this is the fact that all of your data is available through a web portal. So wherever you are, no matter what device you're on, if you can log in if you've got access to a browser, then you've got access to your data. And that's similar to access on iPhone. We've got native clients for both iPhone and for BlackBerry, which will do both backup and access and recovery and sharing. And then we've got a mobile client for Android and Windows smartphone, which does recovery and access and sharing, but doesn't do backup yet. So in fact, there's the access component is a very it's actually become quite a major sales point of the overall technology. So that same partner that we quoted before tells a great story about how he was playing golf on a Sunday and got a phone call from a client who said, I need this presentation that we did 3 years ago for a customer, and I think it was called ABC, and I need it by 9 a.m. in the morning, and I know it's in the backup service, which typically would have been an impossible request, frankly, with traditional backup technology. So you would have been looking at spending days getting the appropriate media, recovering the image, searching through that data for the appropriate file. In this particular case, Greg pulls his iPhone out of his pocket, searches using the search functionality, had a couple of years with the data on the cloud, found the file from the cloud, shared it directly to the customer without ever leaving the golf course, which is a pretty amazing use of the technology. And it sounds like a whimsical little story, but it actually highlights the power of using cloud-based backup, because it now gives you this ability to access, share, and manage your data in brand new ways. And that's something the SOS platform does better than anybody else. Our competitors focus on backup and recovery, which is obviously crucially important, but it's just nowhere near as powerful as the SOS system, which then has these extremely useful access, sharing, and management modules. I've got some further questions here. Will the webinar be available? Yep. You'll get an email with a link to the video of the webinar. Margin, we've got some questions about margin. We're going to talk about that more in a little bit. On-site and off-site backup, yep, that's actually the very next feature I'm going to be talking about. Pricing and billing, we're definitely going to talk about that. Data retention. So I'm going to talk about retention and versioning and archiving on the next slide, actually. All right, so yeah, all of these questions I think are going to be handled on the next slide, so why don't I just do that? From a security standpoint, there's an option that the SOS UltraSafe system allows you to use private key security so that not even SOS employees can get access to the data. Obviously, be advisable not to lose the key. Compression and transfer systems, the software is very, very bandwidth sensitive, and there's actually, you can manually control the bandwidth that the software should use, or otherwise it'll do auto bandwidth. It will detect the bandwidth activity on the particular PC. It can't always detect the total network traffic, but it can detect the network traffic on the PC it's installed on, and it will then change its bandwidth consumption pattern based upon what it's learning about the local environment. The software uses binary delta compression so that every day all it does is extract the binary difference that has changed, and therefore the daily scheduled backup only transfers a fraction of the amount of data that needs to be transferred. In fact, we find that the daily incrementals are less than 1% of the size of the overall baseline backup payload. File filtering, so you can tell the software what to back up or what not to back up. Physical media upload, this is our seeding service, so I had a few questions about this. We will FedEx out you a disk. You then use that drive to run your backup locally to that drive. It's then all still fully encrypted. Send that disk back to us, and we do the upload for you. So through that process, you can move terabytes and terabytes of data up to the cloud in a matter of days, whereas that might otherwise take a month or so. Physical media, powerful recovery. Well, before I go on to that, let me talk about physical media recovery. We don't get it. This is not as often requested as physical media upload, but we can send you out a disk with your data on it. So if you did have a full disaster and you needed to recover your entire environment, we can send that disk out to you, and we call that a physical media recovery, which is just the reflection of a PMU, a physical media upload. A comment here that I've skipped over local backup. Very, very good point. I apologize for that. So built into